Namaste everyone, welcome to another episode of the Hindu Youth Network under the auspices of Hindu Endowments Board. We are running this Hindu Insider series, and this particular episode is proudly brought to you by the Hindu Youth Network as well as the Hindu Center. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. Today we have a wonderful speaker with us, and he's going to share with us on the understanding God. Who, what, and where is God? And for that, we have Mr. Ravi, who's the Hindu Center's Education Committee Advisor. Thank you, Mr. Ravi, for accepting our humble invitation and joining this program. I think this evening's program is going to be very exciting, and it's going to be another enriching episode for all of us, especially in terms of broadening our perspectives. We earlier this week, we had a call for audience to submit your questions, and thank you so much. I think we received more than 23 questions. We have tried to cluster them, so we may not be individually answering them, but we have clustered them, and I'll be asking Mr. Ravi the questions. But in the event where you are unsatisfied with the answer, or if you have further queries, please feel free to drop your questions in the comment section, and we will gauge based on the time available and whether that has been already answered, and we will try to answer. For questions that really require in-depth answers and response, we may not be able to provide you right away, but I'm sure we will find another way to reach out to you and provide you the answers. So once again, with that, I think we can begin this evening's discussion, understanding God. Mr. Ravi, when we say understanding God, I think we need to understand, we need to know what is God and who is God. I mean, in today's context, everything goes by validation. We want to know if something happens, we are always going by scientific examples, right? Okay, show me, what is the proof? We are always seeking for proof. But God seems to be, it's sometimes so hard, to answer everything and to prove everything. So maybe let's start out with who is God, especially when there's so many forms. Who do we revere as God?
Okay. Thank you, Karthik. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks for that question. What is God? You see, let me start off by asking you a simple question. When I say the word bank, what comes to your mind?
Bank, money.
B-A-N-K.
Yeah, money.
Money, right? Because you're thinking of a
Yes.
bank where you deposit money, right? I wasn't
Correct.
referring to a bank. I was referring to a river bank. You see?
Right.
So, the point is, a single word can have many connotations. So when we use the word God, it can mean many things to many people, and based on our notions of our preconceived notions of what God is. So because of this, in the Hindu scriptures, they had actually had two specific models to introduce the devotee to the concept of God. And that is when, if you can show the slide now at this point, be good.
Yep.
Yeah. So in Hinduism, we have two particular models, what we call as the favorite deity model and the absolute reality model. So the favorite deity model is the one on the left. As you can see, there in that model, we superimpose the attributes of God of omniscience, omnipresence, and omnipotence on a particular favorite form, and that particular form is taken to be the form of God with all those powers. That is what we call as the favorite deity model. The other one is what we call as the absolute reality model. And in this absolute reality model, we are looking at the universe, the entire creation, as a manifestation of the God. And how the Shastras talk about, in particular Mundaka Upanishad, where they talk about the analogy of how a spider projects the web from itself. So the manifestation of the universe out of God is demonstrated as an example of how the spider projects the web. So the web and the spider are one and the same. So here God is both the material and intelligent cause of the creation. This is what we call as the absolute reality model. So the absolute reality model will lend credence to the point that because everything and everyone is a manifestation of God, therefore divinity is present in everything and everyone. So this explains why God is love, God is in everyone, divinity is in everyone, and these are things that we find in all the Hindu scriptures. So this is all premised on the absolute reality model. The third point I want to mention about this slide before we take it away is that what's very important in this slide is actually that arrow in the middle. That you see that yellow arrow in the middle that is pointing both ways. Yeah. Now, what the arrow is trying to say is these two models are not mutually exclusive models. A devotee in can be observing or practicing either of these models to varying degrees. And secondly, it doesn't mean that one is a superior model or one is the inferior model. They are basically different ways of relating to God. Okay, and today, which is the more popular model, obviously, is the favorite deity model. The favorite deity model allows people to worship God in a particular form of a particular state with particular attributes which are favorable or preferred by them. So that explains why in Hinduism we have many deities and many ways of worshipping God. That arises from this favorite deity model. In the absolute reality model, there is a singular reality that is manifested, that is God, a singular reality that is God, that is manifested as the entire creation, including you and me. So this is primarily the how God is presented in Hinduism. So in any Hindu scripture, if you take it and look at the mention of God, it's often either or a mix of both of these two models. So I hope that answers the question of what is God in the Hindu tradition.
Yes, it does. It does. But so now I think the next question would then be, I think you briefly mentioned God as a creator, right? And then there's different roles to it as well. Maybe you can elaborate further, also in based on the following question, which is, do we really need God to live a moral life? I mean, if because I think they have drawn references to karma, the concept of karma, actions, and we are responsible and stuff like that. So if that's the case, do we really need God to live a moral life? If we are the sole responsible, we are supposed to be solely responsible to do our actions, then what is the purpose of God then, beyond just creation, maintenance, and destruction?
Good. You mentioned karma. Now let me ask you a question again. Sorry, I have to ask for every question you're asking, I'm asking you back a
Yes,
question.
yes, please do.
When you set out to do a particular task, are you guaranteed success?
No,
Guaranteed? No. Okay,
no.
obviously we're not. You can put in the best effort. You can put in all the right effort. You can have the best support. You can have all the best circumstances, the best environment. But do results always turn out the way we want them to be? No, it doesn't happen. There's always some element, I don't want to call it luck, I call it an unknown element that somehow plays a part to determine outcomes. And sometimes the outcomes can be in our favor, sometimes it's not in our favor. So this and when things don't turn out in our favor, or when something unexpected happen, we say, okay, it arises because of the karma, because of it was, oh, I'm not destined to be, or things like that, we say. But now I ask you the hard question: is this something that we have to live with? What if I were to give you a proposition where I can give a solution whereby the karma, that whatever endeavor you take up, it will give you success, highly likely to give you success. But more importantly, in the event that you do not get success, you are still able to accept that outcome. And this is where I can mention that a God-centered life, a life where an individual puts God at the center of his work, of his endeavor, such a person, when he embarks on all the activities of his life, the outcomes are going to be, I mean, of course, he has to put best effort, that's a given. But after putting in all the best effort, if the results are not favorable, he is in a position to ask for God, or even before that, to ask for God ask for God the strength to accept whatever the outcome may be, and not be shattered, not be broken, not be conflicted or devastated by the outcomes. So this is the value, if I may use the word, the value proposition of having God. Yes, you are an architect of your life. Yes, everything is in your hands. But do outcomes always favor you? No, they don't. And when outcomes don't favor you, are you able to manage it? Aren't you disappointed? And sometimes disappointed in a big way, hurt sometimes. So this is where God comes in. Put in your best effort, but with a God-centered life. First, you have a high probability of success. Secondly, if your karma isn't as good and somehow you're not destined to get it, or if things don't go your way, you have the strength, you have the cushion to fall back on, where the God's grace will give you the strength to be able to go through with that disappointment, to be able to go through with that unfavorable outcome. So this is the role that God can play, or rather, God has to play in one's life to enable that in our life we are always happy. You see, because human life is not for us to suffer. We're not here to suffer, go through actions, do actions, and go through this lottery, or will I get it? Will I not get it? Will I pass? Will I fail? Will I get the promotion? Will I not get promotion? Is life really all about this? Every day waking up, hoping for things to happen your way, despite all the best effort that I put in? Is this human life? That's not human life. Human life is to be happy, whatever the outcome may be. That is human life. We are not born to suffer. We are born to be happy. And a God-centered life assures you that you will be happy.
Thank you so much. I think that was a very well packed answer to really understand what the purpose of God. But now there's another question that has come in, and it's pretty much related to it. It's earlier mentioned that we need Ishvara Anugraha, the God's grace, in order to in a way secure 100% success, or even in an unfavorable situation to cope with that, you still need God's grace so that you have that strength to cope with whatever tough times that you may be facing. But back in the scriptures, we have read that God has taken different forms and revealed himself to devotees, has appeared on earth, and etc. But in today's context, we see so many atrocity happening, and why isn't then God not taking the form in this Kali Yuga? One has asked.
God's strategies are not so predictable, He could be having a different strategy now, for all you know. You don't know. I mean, most of these avatars, when they were existing, you never knew that they were avatars. Many people could not even acknowledge their divinity. We only knew about it much later after their passing on. Of course, there were some great people who knew that they were manifestations of God even while they existed. The strategy is not always the same. It could be a different strategy that's adopted now. It does not mean that now, if you have more atrocities compared to the past, it means there's a dire need for God to immediately come. It can come in many forms. It can come through you and me. It can come through more good people, and it could come through a greater awareness of God. So it's difficult to say to answer why God has not manifested right now in this place, but he's because of that, his reach is so far and wide. He could be working through good souls, through good people, and that goes without saying. There are so many good people. While you say atrocities are there are good people. There are people who are inclined towards God. There are people out there who are loving and caring. We saw this in the COVID situation, how it brought out the goodness in humanity. And how did goodness in humanity come about? It comes about in some situation or in many situations through an appreciation of divinity in others. So there are many ways in which God can work. And coming in the form of an avatar to destroy a demon is just one of the many tools at his disposal.
Right. Okay. So if that's the case, another one has asked a relevant question. Then how can one best understand God? Through jnana, knowledge, or felt through devotion, bhakti?
Okay. You mentioned the word understanding God. So to understand something, what do I need? I need knowledge, right? Without knowledge, you can't understand, right?
Correct.
But to believe something, I don't need knowledge. Okay. 1 + 1 = 2 is not a belief, it's an understanding. Okay. So bhakti will lead to jnana, because you start off with a belief, which is devotion, belief in it, and through that belief, through that ardent devotion, it will lead to the knowledge of the knowledge and understanding of who God is and what is God. Okay. So bhakti leads to jnana. But that does not mean that once you are on the journey to seeking jnana, you don't need bhakti. They are both mutually reinforcing. So where does one start? The starting will always be the traditional multiple devotee model. I've forgotten the word that I used there. What is the word that sorry.
I'll put it back from here.
Sorry, traditional deity model. A favorite deity model, sorry. You can take it
Yeah.
again. The word just slipped.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So the starting point will always be the favorite deity model, where one connects to a particular preferred form. And through greater intense devotion to that form, through worship of that form, one develops the understanding. The knowledge comes through the grace of God. This has been the demonstration. Why are we saying this? It's demonstrated in the lives of saints in the Hindu tradition. You know, we have saints of Bengal, Tukaram, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so many of them. And in South, you have Nayanars, you have Tirunjana Sambandar, Tirunavakadasar, lots of them. So it starts with a worship of a form that eventually leads to knowledge of the form. But when the knowledge of the form is attained, it does not mean that you can kick the ladder that you used to bring you up. No. It mutually reinforces, it makes the bhakti, the devotion, stronger, if anything else. So the short answer is both are required, and both are mutually reinforcing.
Right. So if that's so the next question then one would probably naturally ask is we have so many scriptures. Sometimes it's also hard to and the different scriptures teach different meanings of God. And is there like how do we make sense of the differences in the different sects of Hinduism then?
Okay.
Because each one might portray God in a particular form, right? Might glory God in a particular form. So how do we make sense of the differences?
So this is sometimes taken as a weakness in Hinduism, but if you look at it in depth, it's actually a strength of Hinduism. It's just like food, you know. If I would ask you to eat chapati every day, well, how will you feel?
Boring.
You want to have variety. Human nature is sometimes to have variety in some things, you know, things that are especially dear to us. You see, so the Hindu tradition gives you an option, you know, where you have a range of forms for worship. That's why I said in the favorite deity model, if you look at it, when you choose a particular deity, that deity, you superimpose the entire concept of godhood on it. That means that deity is taken to be omnipresent, is present everywhere, omniscient, all-knowing, omnipotent, all-powerful. And then you worship that form. So that and there are literatures, scriptures. So this explains why there are many scriptures in Hinduism, because for a particular form, there will be dedicated scriptures for that form. Let's say I take a form of Lord Ganesha. So there are scriptures dedicated to Lord Ganesha. Lord Ganesha has got 1001 names, Sahasranama. He's got 108 names, Ashtotra. He's got Puranas dedicated to Ganesha Purana. Then you have got stotras, songs of praise, hymns of praise dedicated to Lord Ganesha. And the whole range, the full works of it, only on Lord Ganesha. Then you have, let's say I take another form, Lord Subramania. You have the whole range of the same thing. Ganesha, Muruga got his own set of 108 names, his own set of 1008 names. So, and a whole set of stories, which is called Skanda Purana, you know. So you look at it. So because of the range of forms, it's inevitable that you will have a range of scriptures coming about it. And don't forget, the Indian tradition is very long. The Vedas were written as early as 2000 BC. 2000 BC, which makes it 4,000 years old. Yeah, it's about 4,000 years old. Okay. So we got a tradition that's ancient, gone through a time, withstood the test of time, and gives us the options to select. And the beauty about these scriptures is it doesn't criticize the other. I mean, of course, here and there you will have a particular Purana saying that Ganesha is the ultimate one, you know, but that arises from that favorite deity model, where it's out of necessity, the author of the scripture will say, yes, Ganesha is the most superior form, because you have imputed all the absolute values onto Ganesha. But that does not mean that a devotee of Ganesha condemns or is required to condemn or put down a devotee of Muruga. That is not something that is advocated in the scriptures. These are human failings that you may see here and there in the history of men, but at no point does the scripture condemn the other to say that that should be put down or that person is inferior. It doesn't do that, you see. So the scriptures are there, wide range of them arising from their various forms, and they are there for people to pick and choose. The next question then would be, if I worship Ganesha, then does it mean that I can't jump ship to Lord Shiva? The answer is no, you can. If you feel like worshipping Ganesha, you can. Tomorrow morning, if I wake up and I feel like worshipping Muruga, that's fine. What is important is the connection to God, the love for God. The form doesn't matter. The form is according to you. The form is there for you. God doesn't care what form you take. What God wants is your love, your love for Him, your worship for Him, to tell Him your problems, make Him your friend, make Him your partner, make Him the center of your life. That is what God wants. And importantly, see the divinity in others. And because He resides in everyone else, show the love and compassion for all other human beings. Show that love, compassion for other human beings. Why? Because God is in them, just as God is in you. Okay, that's
Okay.
what God wants. All the other pujas, your mantras, your shlokas, all of this are only to support this fundamental tenet. All of this
Mm.
pujas and mantras and shlokas are all paraphernalia to support this fundamental idea that God is in me, God is in others. I need to connect to God. I need to put God as the center of my life. That's what Hinduism is about.
Right. I mean, you mentioned that God is in every, it resides in everyone, but sometimes some have commented and have also asked, but it's so tough to see the divinity in everyone, especially when one behaves in a very unfriendly fashion, or or harbors a lot of hatred, anger, and demonstrates them. And I think one commenter has also classified it as the influence of Maya. And that makes the people ill-natured. So that commenter has asked, why is the power of Maya so strong than the power of God if God resides in all of us? And how can we then work on this?
Yeah, it's a good question. So that is where again the two models come in. You start off with the belief that God is in everyone, because that's what the favorite deity model will say, because God is omnipresent, right? If God is omnipresent, He's present in everyone. So if I'm a devotee of Narayana, my starting premise should be that I believe that Narayana is in me, Narayana is in everyone, including the crook, including the guy who is doing all the wrong things. Narayana is in everyone, right? That is the starting of the tradition, favorite deity model. So with that, so this is where your spiritual sadhana, your spiritual endeavors start. Where I put in the effort to see, look past a person's shortcomings, to look and find for the goodness, find the divinity in that person. This is part of a spiritual journey. This is what the spiritual journey is about. Yes, I'm not saying it's easy. It's very difficult to look at the divinity to someone who has wronged you, and worse, for the one who is repeatedly wronging you every day in your office, your colleague, your family, your relative, or whatever. It's tough. But this is the challenge. This is a challenge. This is the adventure. This is a spiritual adventure that we are here on earth to go through, not to suffer, but to go through the adventure. Take it as a challenge, and and it's not a challenge that it's not a fight that you do on your own. You do it with God by your side. Ask for God's grace to help you see the goodness in others, especially in the ones who have wronged you. It's very easy to see divinity in the people we like. That's very easy. It's very easy to see divinity in the ones you love. That's very easy. That's a low hurdle. The high hurdle is to see divinity in the people who have wronged you, in the so-called the people you dislike. Try to find divinity in them. That's a challenge. That's a spiritual sadhana. Can it be done? Of course it can be done. Look at our history. Look at our history. You'll find people who have done it. Look at all the saints. They've done it. Look at Samandar. Look at Appar. Okay? Look at them. Look at the saints of Karnataka, Telangana. You'll find they've all done it. People will despise them. I'm not saying they become a doormat. No. They believe in what they stood for, but they're able to see divinity and thereby love people who may even have wronged them. This is the challenge. That's what makes a human being a better human being. And this is the zenith of human life, to become this. That is where man moves from being a mere human being to become a God man.
Right. So in the process of leading a God-centered life, that's when you will be able to see the divinity in everyone and stuff like that you mentioned, and that's also a way where we can also cope, or rather overcome, when we meet people, or rather better cope with people who may not be nice to us, or who might be very unpleasant to us. And if you're going to attribute everything in that sense, to as okay, there's divinity in everyone. So in good times, we always thank God, right? So this is going to the next question. In good times, we thank God, and then is it also fair to then attribute whatever sufferings we go through to God as well?
Yeah. You
That's a
see,
question that has come in.
the unpleasant things that happen to us, we got to ask ourselves, why do unpleasant things happen to us? Why do bad things happen to us? So the straightforward answer is karma. I don't want to go too much into this karma cycle. I think
Yes, understood.
we'll save it for next week's session. But essentially, karma is basically the law of cause and effect. So things that happen to me are a consequence of things that I've done knowingly or unknowingly in this birth or in the past birth. So I get these consequences. So the question is, should I blame this on God? It's like the law of gravity. If I sit under an apple tree and the apple were to fall on my head, it's the law of the gravity that caused the apple to fall on my head. Correct?
Yeah,
Law of
yes,
gravity is a natural law. Law of karma is also a natural law. So you're facing the consequences. Whether you blame God or don't blame God, it doesn't make a difference to God. But what is more important is, what do you do after that? How you handle it, that is more important. When that um, unpleasant or unfavorable thing has happened to you, how you react to it, that is more important, and that is where God comes in. And that's where what we are prescribing is a God-centered, the Hindu tradition prescribes a God-centered life to help you manage with this unfavorable situations or unfavorable outcomes.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Ray. I think that was very enlightening. Now, the next question would be then, has this relationship between God and devotion evolved over the years? Has it evolved? You mentioned a lot of great saints who reached God or who had such a strong spiritual connection with the God in the past. But has this model changed in today's context?
The fundamentals have not changed. The ways in which it's executed, the way in which it's manifested, has certainly changed. In Hinduism, we have two types of practice, two types of what we call dharmas, what we call samanya dharma and vishesha dharma. Some things are very fundamental; they never change. For example, speaking truth. 100 years ago, you must speak the truth, right? You won't like it if 100 years ago people won't like it if you tell them a lie, right? Today, if I tell you a lie, you don't like it. 200 years from now, if I tell you a lie, is somebody going to like it? No. These things don't change, right? These are what we call as samanya dharmas. That means they are there forever. Things like hurting others, lying, the value for truth, cheating others. These things never change. They are established. Then there is the other part, in the Hindu tradition, what we call as Vishesha Dharma. This is time and place dependent. This is where the religious practices come in. Things like how we worship, what sort of clothes we wear when we enter the temple. Today I can wear this t-shirt and walk into a temple. Say, if 500 years ago, if I would have, or maybe even, I don't know, 500, maybe 500 years, there was no t-shirt. Maybe 50 years ago, if I were to wear a t-shirt and go into some temple, they probably wouldn't allow me. You see? So the dress code and things like that, they change, they adapt according to the times. This is one of the strengths of Hinduism. It enables Hinduism to keep up with the times and not get stuck in a time warp. So while there is a permanent, unchanging base to anchor the tradition, on top of that permanent base, there is this there is another layer that allows for flexibility and adaptation with time, place, and society. You see, so that's how so the question is: has Hinduism and worship of God changed? Yes, they have changed insofar as the Vishesha Dharma, the changing aspect is component. Yes, the changing component is concerned. Yes, they have changed, but they have not changed with regard to the stable foundation, which is the unchanging element.
But do you think that there's a lot more focus these days on rituals rather than seeking knowledge of God?
It depends. It depends. Um, it depends on which society. In some societies, you've seen an increase. In some societies, you've seen a decrease. So it really depends on where you're looking at. Rituals increase in rituals.
I mean, in today's context, I think we see a lot of temples engaging and encouraging devotees to be part of a lot of rituals, and I think one has asked, then what's the purpose of seeking knowledge if rituals are given greater significance? So probably you can put it on a weighing scale, and maybe you can tell us which one has greater significance, rituals or seeking knowledge.
You see, you your question seems to suggest that the two are separate and again mutually exclusive. They seem to you seem to suggest that they're two different things. I don't see it that way. A ritual, if properly executed and if properly committed to by an individual, can lead to greater connection to God which in turn can lead to greater knowledge. So a ritual is a means to an end. It's not an end in itself. So I wouldn't be troubled if there's an increase in rituals. What I'll be troubled if there's an increase in rituals where people are going through rituals mechanically without understanding why they're doing it. That is a bigger danger, because then you get into mechanicalness and you are not putting God at the forefront. You're not leading a God-centered life. You're not connecting to God. You're just going through motion. The priest does his puja, his prayers. We just pay the money, get the receipt, and we do the sankalpa. And next thing, when the priest is doing it, we are even having a coffee at the back of the temple.
Yeah.
That becomes a problem, you see, because your mind is not connecting to God. Rituals are a means to connect to God via the mind. The mind is a very important and central element in rituals, and that is where our education and awareness is very important. People need to understand that rituals are not something that we go through mechanically, because if you go through mechanically, you're not going to get any benefit out of it. No benefit is going to accrue out of it, or at least, okay, let me say, maybe not. I don't want to be too strong on that. Minimal benefits are going to come to you. More benefits going to come from you if you're mentally connected to God during the ritual. Okay, so this and as a result of that greater connection to God, it's going to give me more knowledge about God. I seek to discover God. You see, since you spoke about this, I like to bring in the part about devotees. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about 4 types of devotees. The first type is what we call as a devotee who goes to God only when he's in distress. Only when I'm in trouble, I'll run to God. There's one type. The second type is the type of devotee who prays to God for his well-being. He wants promotion, he wants his money, he wants his car, he wants his job, he wants a beautiful wife, he wants a big house, all of it, all the good things. That's the second type of devotee. The third type of devotee is what we call as a jignasu. This person is a person who seeks to know God. This is where your question comes in, where you spoke about knowing God. So you're talking about a jignasu, a person who seeks to know God. And the fourth type is a person who is already one with God, who has discovered and understood God. He is called a jnani. So first one is the one who goes in God in terms of trouble. Second one who prays to God for wealth and well-being. Third is the one who seeks to understand God. And the fourth one who has already understood God. For them. Lord Krishna says, all 4 are dear to me. All 4 are dear to me. Okay. So your question on knowledge is about the third person who wants to seek God, who wants to discover God, who wants to know what is God. For such a person, the rituals and worship are a means for him to get greater connection to God. The more you connect to God, the more you will understand God and see God's play in the in your life. See, so rituals are a means to go towards that. They're not 2 different things. That it doesn't mean that once I'm seeking God, I don't have to do rituals, I don't have to do worship. This is a misconception that has somehow crept into the tradition that once I'm a seeker, I'm studying Hindu philosophy, I don't need to worship, I don't need to go to temple, I don't need rituals. No, it's not true.
Right. I mean, earlier you mentioned that there are 4 type of devotees, and you did explain that. There's this question from a commenter, Pramila. She has asked, service to mankind is service to God. So yes, earlier you mentioned the 4 types of devotees. They all seek God in different ways, in different times. But comparing an atheist who serves the less fortunate versus a staunch devotee who only serves via preaching about God. That's her question. Who is then closer to God, and whom is God closer to? That's her question. Yeah.
Good. It goes to my earlier point again. What is a disadvantage that an atheist has? I don't want to sell the merits of worshiping God, because then I'll sound like a salesman, selling God. I mean, that's boring. I'll give you a better. I'll come from another angle. What is the disadvantage that an atheist has that a devotee doesn't have? A disadvantage.
I guess it's. Yeah, can I answer?
Does the atheist always succeed in everything he does?
No.
Does the atheist get everything he wants?
No.
When things go wrong, does the atheist doesn't break down? He's fine, is it? No. What is the atheist going to do when things don't turn out the way he wants?
Correct.
Go back to my earlier point about God-centered
Yes,
life. Huh?
that's right. So
So
it's the Ishra Anugraha. Yeah.
exactly. So you need, again, it's about the unknown element in all our karmas, in all our activities. There's always this unknown element. To harness this unknown element and shape it to our favor, that is the role of God. And that's why God-centered life is indispensable. Okay. And if things don't turn out favorably, how I can cope with it better, how I can be strong amidst that storm. That is important. And I want to stretch it, not just strong, I can be happy amidst that storm. Because why am I here? Remember, I'm here only to be happy. That's what I'm here for. Human life is to be happy. So I want to use God to be happy in my life. Yeah.
That's true. Perhaps you can also
This doesn't have the benefit of all of this. Atheists can't do all of this. Because there's no God, right? There's no God there.
Yeah, true. So maybe to go back to slightly earlier, one of the points of seeking God. We broadly, I think, mentioned knowledge and bhakti as two broad means. I think one has asked, but there are also several other ways within the bhakti category that we can reach God. Would you be able to share a little bit more on that? How to seek God within in the category of bhakti?
Bhakti.
If I'm not wrong, that person is referring to Bhakti Yoga chapter. Yeah.
Okay. You see, sometimes in our tradition, unfortunately, over the years, because of the elaborate rituals that we see, somehow it's no fault of the ritual, it's no fault of the temple, it's nobody's fault. Somehow, sometimes certain confusion or some difficulties come. So people start to wonder, how am I going to connect to God? The rituals are so complex, and that's why sometimes people just pay the money and I'll just sit in the corner of the temple and come to that. But relating to God is not like you don't have to go through this complex. I'm not saying you don't need to go to temple and pray. What I'm trying to say is that what is important in connecting to God is connecting from the heart. It's just like asking a friend for help. It's no different from asking a human friend for help. How you ask a friend for a help, asking God is the same way. You can speak in English. It doesn't matter. God understands English. It doesn't mean that you speak in Sanskrit alone. Sanskrit alone, It doesn't mean that. God understands all language. God understands the language of the heart. Important thing is you have to be sincere. Okay, you have to be sincere, and you have to ask just like asking a friend. So these rituals, these prayers, going to temple, all of this are actually to aid this process of enabling me to connect to God. So the connection is the objective I'm trying to achieve. Rituals, pujas, archana, worship in temples are all means to achieve this connection. If this connection is not there, all of that doesn't achieve its. Okay, so in the absence of assuming I can't go to temple for whatever reason and I can only stay at home and pray, or even if I don't have an altar, I'm stuck somewhere out there where there's no altar to pray, God is everywhere. The important thing is the connection from the heart, the love for God. And it is something that has to be continuously cultivated, nurtured, and maintained. It's just like a friend. You go to a friend, you cultivate friendships. So same your relationship to God. It's a love relationship. Some great saints call it a divine romance. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, they'll talk about different ways. You don't have to be friend. You can have different types of relationship. They'll talk about how you can relate to God as a friend, as a mother and a child, a father and a son, a master and a slave. There are 9 different types of, I can't remember, they talk about 9 different types of ways of relating to God. You can choose any one. But what is important is be sincere about it, be honest about it, be consistent about it. Then you can connect anywhere and anytime. Then pujas, archanas, and temple rituals are all means to add on to it, to make it grow, make the flame grow bigger and bigger. And that will lead to that knowledge of God that you spoke about earlier. It'll give you clarity on who God is. And then finally you will go to that last stage which Krishna spoke about, the jnani, the person who discovers the oneness with God.
Right.
What's the basis for saying all this? Very simple. The basis for this, you can see it in the lives of the saints in India, in the history. These saints are not mythological creatures. They are historical data of People like Tukaram, Namdev, Bhadrachalam Ramdas, Samandar, Akbar, they are all historical characters, lots of historical data about their lives, all well authenticated. Their lives will live with a message, a clear demonstration that it is possible for men to ascend to that level.
So I think Vignesh Jodimani has asked via Facebook, so do we need a third party to be involved in this connection building or this relationship building with God?
Okay. He's talking about the priest, I believe.
I believe
So
so
I
too.
can't see a third party coming in and
Or even for that matter, a guru, maybe. Let me explain, edit further. Yeah, maybe guru. Do we need teachers in between in this relationship building with the God?
okay, good that he pointed out Guru. I was only thinking of a priest. You see, let me handle the priest first, then I'll go to the guru.
Sure.
The the priest, it's a profession. Okay, he's doing a job in the temple. He's facilitating. He's not an intermediary. You know, whether you connect to God when he's doing the archana or not is none of his business. He is doing his job. There are certain rules in the book, what they call padatis and agamas, and he is supposed to observe certain mental state and observe certain procedures. It's a SOP. He's supposed to do it in the course of doing the archana. How well he does the archana is one thing. But if you are going to benefit from it, you need to connect to God mentally when the archana is going on. Okay? So his role is, even if for some reason, for whatever reason, the priest doesn't do a good job, it doesn't in any way diminish the benefit to you as long as your mind is connected to God. Okay? As long as you are connected to God during the archana, regardless of how the priest performs it, it doesn't make a difference. Okay? God is not so picky on these processes and procedures. So we don't have to worry too much about it. And it's not mandatory that every time you need to have a third party. You can relate to God anytime and everywhere. That's for priest. Guru. Okay. Guru often comes into play because of the Hindu scriptures. Our scriptures are vast. And because they are vast and sometimes written in a different language, sometimes they can be very cryptic, there is a need for interpretation. There's a need for interpretation of the scriptures to bring it down to a level where laymen can understand, yeah? By a proper relevant examples. So this the guru can do. Okay, the guru helps to clarify, make the understanding clear. So such gurus are there. They help to understand, but guru is like he can bring the horse. It's like bringing the horse to the pond, to the stream. You can only bring the horse. You can't drink for the horse. The work still has to be done by the devotee. Okay, so the guru can play. There is a role for the guru, but it involves effort on the part of the devotee. So without the guru, what is the challenge? Okay, without the guru, the devotee will have difficulty in trying to decipher and try to understand these scriptures himself. There will be challenges because of the language, because of the syntax, because of the grammar, and many factors. So the guru can aid the process. Without the guru, it may be harder for the devotee to reach God. So traditionally, again going back to tradition, our saints, there have been saints who had gurus, who reached God via gurus. There were others who did not have gurus and also reached God. So you have both examples. So it's not a must.
Okay. Got it. I think two people through two different platforms have asked a question about conversion, but I would like to rephrase it in a different way and ask you, how can we discourage or prevent others from losing faith in God? Let's put it in this way. Yeah.
Losing faith in God or losing faith in Hinduism?
Both. Yes. Let's put it both then. Yeah.
Losing faith. Why does one lose faith? Let's ask ourselves. Why does one lose faith? I mean,
It could be.
I assume it's a case where someone has the faith first and then loses it, right?
Yes.
It's not a case
Correct.
where one starts with a
No.
blank paper.
No.
That's
No.
okay, no? Okay.
Yeah. I think it comes from the point of probably when one person's in distress and they keep engaging in a particular thing, like you mentioned, the rituals. One invests so much in rituals and not finding any results.
Exactly.
I don't know. That could be one.
Exactly. You see, so what is the going back to the example that you just cited? So what is the problem there? Why did that happen? It arises from a lack of knowledge, a lack of understanding. You see, this is where if you ask me, in today's Hindu society, the society of Hindu, at least as far as Singapore goes, you see, there is a need for learning and awareness in the rituals that we do. You need to have I'm not, if not an in-depth understanding, at least a certain depth of understanding in the rituals that we are doing and why we are doing it, and the purpose of doing it. Without that, then everything becomes superficial, and when things don't go your way or things start going southwards, all the question marks comes in, and all the doubts start creeping in. Doubts about God, doubts about the faith, doubt about the rituals. So this is the problem, and this is why. Then, of course, then the mind is open to somebody else who can dangle a better carrot, which can be in the form of another faith. So that naturally happens. So what's the solution? The solution is to have more learning, more Hindu learning, more awareness of the rituals and the practices that take place in temple, and primarily the God-centered life. A lot of times, if you look at people who start having doubts, you'll find that the connectedness with God may not be so strong. The connectedness with God needs to be cultivated over time. That is very important. That's why I keep saying about God-centered life. The God-centered life means God is always there in your mind share. It's always there in your mind share. He's always there in your awareness regularly. It's not a case where you only go to see him once a week or think about him once or twice a week. It's not that kind of infrequent connection. It's a regular connection. That is what I call a God-centered life. So if you have that, you're less likely to start to doubt things when things don't go your way. Things shouldn't. And even if things don't go your way, as I mentioned earlier, if the connection is strong, the grace of God will give you the strength to be able to cope with things that you don't want, or give you the strength to cope with that unfavorable outcome. So this is the remedy, if you ask me, to help arrest this problem. So it's about Hindu learning, greater learning and awareness of the tradition, the scriptures, and the rituals, and more intense God-centeredness, God-connectedness.
Right. So just to rephrase to ensure that some of us understand it correctly, because we are also increasingly getting similar questions. So if one experiences frustration, even though despite leading a God-centered life, or keeps asking why me when I go through suffering, it just implies that the connection needs to be strengthened furthermore. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay. And I think there's also a comment here that says that apparently in Bhagavad Gita 4. The verse 4.3 to 4, I think, I'm not sure, but says that Krishna says that one must approach a guru. But earlier you mentioned that it's not a must. But one commentator said that, but it's a must to have a guru if one desires moksha. So maybe you may want to clarify a little bit. If the goal differs, then is there like any variation?
Correct. Because if you look at jnanam, because in the context when Krishna says that in chapter 4 of Gita, it's primarily in the context of seeking moksha, but the purpose of the goal of seeking moksha and oneness with God. So in that tradition of jnana yoga, most of the time there is often a guru. Why? There's often a need for a guru. Why? Because that involves intense study of scriptures, what we call Vedanta Shastra, Upanishads, involves lots of study, including Gita. So for those type of pursuits, there is a need for guru to help you understand, to decrypt these scriptures and help you understand the scriptures better. So for that, the guru has a role there. So that is, so in that context, Krishna was saying it largely from the standpoint for the fourth type of devotee, the third and the fourth, the one who seeks God, the jnanasu, and the fourth one who's already merged with God. The first and the second actually don't need a guru. You can just go to God. God doesn't put layers. He's somebody who is very approachable person.
Yeah, I really like how universe always gives me this a great way to enter to the next question. Now you have received a question that says, why are we, I mean, you earlier mentioned that there are different ways and there are no barriers to reach God, and there are no barriers in that sense. But one has asked, why are we asked not to worship God when someone has passed on in a family? Isn't that the time where we actually need greater solace from God? So why are there restrictions in why are there restrictions from reaching worshiping God during this
I'll be
period?
honest with you. I'll be honest with you. I don't have an answer that is logically acceptable. Okay, all I'll tell you is this: in the Hindu tradition, in the Hindu scriptures, there is a certain um,
All right. Meanwhile, the audience, if you have further questions, you may drop your questions in the comment section below. Mr. Ravi will definitely be happy to answer. We have about 10 more minutes left, so we will try to prioritize your questions
yeah,
if it's really possible. Yep, Mr. Ravi.
yeah. Sorry. So, okay, what I was trying to say was that there was an audio interference there. Is there some audio interference there?
It's fine now. It's fine now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You see, in the Hindu tradition, when death, particularly with regard to death, there is a what they call as a saucham, impurity that is associated there with the people living in that house, and sometimes even it extends even to relations. Um, some scriptures talk about it as something. It's not a physical impurity per se, although people sometimes say it's because of the presence of dead body for hygienic reasons. That's one. But it also extends to relatives who may not necessarily be living in their geographical proximity. It extends to relatives who may be living in distant places. So it's a cleanliness, it's an impurity associated with the subtle body, with the soul. And this is something that is subscribed to in the tradition. And it's with regard to this impurity that the scriptures do not advocate an individual to go to the temple during that period of mourning, which typically it can be 14 days. In some traditions, can be 14, 21, sometimes 28 or 31 days. So it's with regard to that. It's an impurity that's at a subtle level, not a physical impurity per se. Because physical impurity, then you can always dismiss it with today's embalming and with today's hygiene standards. The physical impurity is a non-issue. It's an impurity that's taking place at a subtle level, and that is what the tradition is saying and advocating, and that is something that people observe, and that is why the temples don't recommend people to go there. So how do I connect? Yeah. So if I'm in that situation, how do I connect? How do I solve the problem? You can connect to God wherever He is. Connect to God via your heart, because God is everywhere.
Yeah, and I think in a few weeks ago we had another discussion on seeking divine, the new normal, and that I think focused a lot on Manasa Puja. So Manasa Puja is definitely something that we still can do in such times where we are unable to go to temples. So maybe that's one way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Earlier you mentioned about the role of guru, Mr. Ravi. Now maybe we can. One has asked, as parents, how can we then explain or help children understand the purpose of life and the role of God in our life? How to help children understand?
Start early, send them to religious classes if you can't teach them. Uh, Send them to religious classes if you can't teach them at home. Good religious classes, you got Project Bhakti run by Hindu Endowment Board, you got Bala Gurukulam run by Hindu Center. Okay, many classes in Singapore, very convenient. Hindu Center has started online. I don't know about Project Bhakti. They've all started online classes. Expose your children to this when they are young. Subsequently, when they go into teenage and all that, you may find that they are less interested. Doesn't matter what, the seeds that you have sown at a young age will bear fruit at the right time. Trust God in this. Expose them to God, introduce them to the concept of God, tell them about God stories. Start with stories, don't go into complex subject matter. Start with simple God stories. There are lots and lots of them available. If you don't have access to them, just drop a line or drop an email to Karthik or the Hindu Center. We'll be more than happy to assist you. Important thing is, show them that is God, the concept of God. Expose them to the concept of God via the God stories. What will they come to know from God stories? They will come to know the attributes of God. God as someone who is loving, compassionate. A simple story like Krishna. Say you were to take story of Dhruva, Narayana and Dhruva. How Dhruva, or Narayana and Prahalada, the more popular one. Prahalada. God's grace for Prahalada. To what extent he will go and reach out to protect his devotee. The devotee who is subjected to so much of trouble, so much of torture from the father. And despite that, the Prahalada stood by his belief, his faith in Narayana, and how Narayana eventually rewarded Prahalada. The compassion that Narayana has, all of this will be shown via these stories. These are things that you must expose to children when they are young. I get stories in my life. I get people coming up to me and telling me that their sons have converted. They want me to go talk to their sons and ask him to stay on in the Hindu faith. He's 24 years old. What do you want me to do? The dam has busted. And you can't talk to that person at the age of 24 and talk to him about Hinduism. It's difficult. You can, but it's difficult because he's already been exposed to another faith. It's very difficult to do that. But these are the type of issues that parents sometimes come and talk to me. Why that? And when I probe them, it often shows that these children were never exposed to any form of religious education in their life. Other things were important to them. The music class was important. The enrichment program was important. The Sudoku class, the Kumon maths, all of these were very important. Yeah, we do enrichment classes, right? Yeah, I'm not saying these are not important, but where in that checklist is the Hindu learning for your child? You have time for all the enrichment and the tuition, right? Where is the place for the Hindu learning? Where is it? Put that place there. That is my answer to the question. How to expose your child? Make time for the child to know God via all this learning. Okay.
Yeah, and I think another important point to also address here is that, I mean, throughout this evening's discussion, Mr. Ravi, I noticed something. You mentioned continuously about God-centered life, God is loving, God is compassionate and stuff. And I think that's very important because I think I grew with an understanding, or rather, I grew with fear of God, fear for God. I was told that, oh, if you don't do this, this is going to happen, this inauspicious thing is going to happen. So I think many like me would have also, experienced that. And it's only through knowledge then you realize that actually it's not. You don't need to lead a God-feared life. Actually, what we should be doing is God-centered, because God is not going to intimidate you in any way. And it's actually our own actions that create such intimidating circumstances. And with God's grace, we will be able to overcome such unpleasant circumstances. Would you agree with me, Mr. Ravi?
Yes, very much. In the Tamil, they have this. It has become so common. This fear thing. They have this word called bhaya bhakti. Have you heard of this word?
Yes.
It's called bhaya means fear. I mean, fear and devotion. Devotion driven by fear. Bhaya bhakti. There is no bhaya. There is no bhaya. There's no fear. There's no need to fear God. There's only bhakti. There's only love for God. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Okay. So I know so far we have answered a lot of questions revolving God. We have got a few stray questions. It's not we have not covered it directly. Maybe it might be useful to just address them. Just one or two questions very quickly. There's this question on lokas. This person has asked that there are different lokas, and each loka has a particular deva, ishta devata like Krishna, Indra, etc. like that. Why is there a need for so many lokas and so many forms of God in the different lokas? So it's something that's different. We've not addressed this question in particular.
That question is premised on the assumption. That the physical world, the physical loka that we all live, is the absolute and the final loka. That is why he's asking the question: Why is there need for the 14, for the other 13? Huh? We do not know that. These are things that were created by God. You do not even know the absoluteness of your physical world. Okay, we don't know that. The physical world is just one of the many realms of existence, different planes of existence. And the scriptures talk about this, about how the soul can, after death, can go to different planes, different realms. So these lokas are these realms. Huh? Why are they there? Because those realms are places where other souls who are not embodied in the physical form exist. So it's a place for them to stay. It's not a physical world, it's a subtle realm. It's a place for other souls to stay, just as you and I are staying now on this physical realm. That's all. So it's just a
Right.
place for people to stay. That's why there are many places. Yeah.
Yeah. So earlier we mentioned the different ways. One has asked, Jaya Bhupati has asked, will regular connection in meditation give us the strength and blessing we need? And does this imply that we do not need to follow ritual? I think you've answered the second part. Maybe you can talk about the importance of meditation.
Meditation, what is meditation? Meditation is basically putting your mind on a object, on a single object to the exclusion of everything else. Meditation is putting your mind to focus on a singular object to the exclusion of everything else. So, what can the singular object be? The singular object should be the object that you love. All right. And here in this case, the object can be God. Okay, it can be via mantra, it can be audio, it can be visual, imaginary. So meditation will naturally strengthen because I spend time thinking, dedicating time to sit there and think about the object of my love. Naturally, I will connect better. Does it mean that I don't have to do rituals? No, not definitely not. Rituals will add on. It's a building that you're building, and the rituals will help to amplify and make your connection with God stronger.
So I think we have hit the 1 hour mark, Mr. Ravi. So just to sum up this evening's discussion, I'm just going to provide a short summary. But please feel free to jump in anytime if I've
Sure.
misrepresented any of the my understanding if it is wrong. So I think we have focused a lot on the importance of leading a God-centered life, and mainly primarily because we may be doing a lot of things. Yes, we have ultimately the choices to make. Most of the actions we are responsible, but you always need Ishvara Anugraha. So if it's like 99.9% is your effort, you always need the 0.001%, and that can be only completed with Ishvara's Anugraha. And we should also work towards seeing the divinity in everyone, because God is everywhere. He's in all forms, including animals, humans, and even nature in that sense. And God is not bounded by any boundaries in that sense. So we should also learn how to see divinity in everyone, and wherever when we feel that hey, we are struggling to see the divinity in someone who behaves in a very unfriendly, unpleasant manner, then that's just a reminder to ourselves that there's a lot more effort required on our part to build our inner spiritual strength to be able to see the divinity in that person, and that can be only achieved when we start praying and also building that relationship with God. And you also mentioned the different ways of building the relationship with God, and rituals and knowledge both are equally important. Bhakti is also equally important, and to do this, you for knowledge part, yes, you definitely need the role of guru, but for the bhakti part, it's just about offering love, so you don't necessarily need a guru per se. And we also looked at the part where when we on the part on the deaf, there are actually no limitations per se. Maybe yes, we may not be able to go to temples due to some customary practices, but definitely we are still able to reach God or through Manasa Puja at times where you have no access to a particular temple, or have no access to for the matter, even the ritual practices. We can't attend a ritual. We can always do Manasa Puja from wherever we are. So this is very applicable, especially during a circumstance where our loved one has passed on, and according to our customary practices, we are not allowed to go to temple. So that kind of situation, we still can reach God in that sense. And then I think towards the end, you mentioned the importance of the role that parents can also play, and it's very important so that they start having this fundamental of understanding on the purpose of God through Puranas, and later on, and they can progress into the spiritual part and look at the spiritual strength. And if you don't do that, then definitely we may create a scenario for our child to even lose faith in Hinduism scriptures as well as in God. And in terms of meditation, you mentioned the significance of it as well earlier. So at this point in time, have I missed out any important points, Mr. Ravi?
No, you have done as always. You always do good summary.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Mr. Ravi, for joining us this evening. I think it was a very enriching experience, and I'm very sorry to our audience if we have not answered your questions. Feel free to still provide us your questions. We will find another way to answer your questions, either by replying to your comments or through our subsequent programs and episodes. Once again, I also like to thank Hindu Center for partnering us in this particular episode. So thank you, Mr. Ravi. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Hindu Center. Any final words from you?
No, nothing.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you. for giving me the platform, the opportunity to share whatever I knew about the scriptures. Thank you very much. Thank you,
Sure.
Ravi.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great evening. See you.
Thank you.